lunch and sports, they should go hand in hand. It's the Power Performances presented by Courtyard by Marriott. Hey, how are you? Jason Horowitz, and once again joined by Ian Eagle. A few-week hiatus here. We had Thanksgiving, and then you were doing the Nets-Celtics game in Boston. It's good to have you back in the studio.
Is it, though? I'm not sure that you're being genuine.
No, it is, because I don't have to. You know, last week, I got to be honest, last week, Trev Alberts is so much taller than me, they made me sit on a phone book. So it's nice to have someone
that's not true.
It's very true.
So you got some insight into my life. I actually got some insight into you a couple of weeks ago. You made a derogatory remark of some sort to me, and I felt that you had crossed the line, but things happen sometimes in the green room.
You have no idea what you're talking about.
And you said then, no, don't take it that way. You said, you're like an uncle to me. This is true. True or not?
No, it's a true statement.
Now think about that for a moment. I'm not that old. To say I'm like an uncle to you, mostly, you're like a brother to me. I would have taken a cousin. At least cousin at that point, it's not age specific.
I have fun with my uncles.
Uncle infers that I'm old compared to you.
My mother's sister is 15 years younger than her.
I don't want to hear it.
Let's get into the show, folks. We got a great show, by the way. 646-CBS-1000, 646-227-1000, the number to call in. And, of course, you can send your emails throughout the show right here, right below us, and we'll get to your emails later on in the show. Don't forget, first two callers today, you're going to get a $50 gift certificate once again to CBSSportsStore.com. The best, the holiday season, the best in, sports apparel. There's hats, there's jerseys, pennants, whatever you want. CBSSportsStore.com, and two $50 gift certificates to the first two callers.
Uncle would like a tie if you're just taking notes in your own head.
One that says greatest uncle that's not an uncle in the world. I'll see where I can find that for you.
Let's take a look at what's on the table for the program today. Power Performance is brought to you by Courtyard by Marriott. What a week in college football. We had last-minute kicks in the NFL. There's a new Brown in town. And CBS Sports college football analyst Gary Danielson will be joining us. Much, much more coming up here on the program. We get things started. It's got to be college football with all the chaos surrounding the BCS. There was one last little wrinkle left when the regular season was wrapping up this past weekend. You look at UCLA as a basketball school, don't you?
You usually do.
I do. They're a basketball school. Yep. Not today. They are a football school because Karl Dorrell and the UCLA Bruins pulled off a major upset. Yes, the streak is over. They had lost 7 straight games to USC. Everybody was already booking USC's flights to Glendale, Arizona. I don't think you can fly into Glendale, but at least to Phoenix, and then they'd get a bus and go to Glendale for the national championship. But no, UCLA had something to say about it. And think about this for a moment. They have to coexist in Los Angeles with USC, national championships, rich tradition. UCLA can't compete on a football platform with the Trojans. This was a huge win for the program, huge win for Karl Dorrell and what he's done for that program, because believe it or not, Jason, there were those out in the LA area that were calling for Karl Dorrell's job as the head coach of the Bruins.
Which is absurd after the season he had last year with the team. They started, I believe, 9-0 last season before they lost at Arizona, which in November with Mike Stoops is a tough place to play, as we've talked about this year. But your football team deserves some credit at a basketball school when during the basketball game, when they raised the national championship banner at halftime of that game, last night at Pauley Pavilion, the football team came out and rang the victory bell, and it was painted Bruin blue. But you've heard these numbers before, but just real quickly, the job Karl Dorrell did this season for the defense, and that's what won them this game. Last season, 113th in total defense, 108th in scoring defense. This year, they improved all the way to 27th scoring defense, and that's in the Pac-10 where points are flying all over the board. So Karl Dorrell did an absolutely amazing job, and first time in 64 games the Trojans did not score double figures.
Going to the Emerald Bowl to take on Florida State for UCLA, maybe this is the first step towards getting to that level where we can consider them a legitimate national team and no longer just a nice story in college football.
All right, well, our next story really couldn't have happened without UCLA. The player could have happened, but the story couldn't. Florida, without UCLA beating USC, would not be in the national championship come January 8th, and maybe without the voters' helps as well. But without this man, Percy Harvin, 106 yards rushing, 62 yards receiving. He is a true freshman, one of the top recruits coming in to college this past year. And it was 2 long plays that really hurt Arkansas in the game. It was a long run, and then it was 31-28, and he broke another long run for a touchdown, and that really crushed Arkansas's hopes and put Florida in the national title game.
Jason, is he a wide receiver or a running back?
Well, he's both. Is Team Tebow a quarterback or a running back? They have a bunch of different athletes, and that's what Urban Meyer has.
And it goes to show you that this Florida team, which will play for a national championship, and we'll get much deeper into that story as we continue along on the program, they've got talent to spare.
Yeah.
Down the road, Florida has a chance to be a power. Now, if they shock Ohio State, if they shock the nation, in my mind, they're a heavy underdog against Ohio State. I don't personally think they have a chance, but you got to play the football game, and there were a lot of people that thought UCLA had no chance against USC. If they are somehow able to win a national championship, this could be the first in a long line, with Percy Harvin being as big a part of the core group. This is a guy that runs a 4.340.
Yeah.
As you said, #1 recruit coming out of high school, was injured the week before.
Pinched nerve.
Pinched nerve. There were questions as to whether or not he was going to play in the SEC championship game, and yet the true freshman wins the MVP in the biggest game of his young career.
He and Tim Tebow are going to kind of go along the lines of Troy Smith and Ted Ginn Jr. at Ohio State for the next couple of years. So you're going to see the future of Florida and the current Ohio State in the national championship game. We'll talk with Gary Danielson about that later on in the show. Remember, 646-CBS-1000, the number to call in and get your calls heard here on the Power Performances presented by Courtyard by Marriott. All right, next story is a season-long story. And folks, this is just an amazing story. Jim Grobe and Wake Forest are going to the Orange Bowl. Just the second time in school history playing on New Year's Day. The last time, well, it was the first time the Gator Bowl was ever played, 1946. We're talking 61 years without going back to a New Year's Day bowl. It's only the 8th bowl they've ever played in the school's history. Now, Jim Grobe, he took this team without their starting quarterback.
Yep.
They lost him early in the year. Starting running back, gone. So they turned their best wide receiver, Kenneth Moore, into their running back. They lose their best defensive player. All these guys are gone, and they still shatter the wins record at Wake Forest. They go 11-2 after the win over Georgia Tech in the ACC title game. By the way, there was nobody there in Jacksonville, which is a different story. It's sad because it's a great Wake Forest team. But they weren't getting the credit with the Rutgers story for being the best story in college football. With Rutgers not going to a BCS Bowl, I think Wake Forest may be the best story this season.
Basketball school?
Well, not last year. They were 3-13 in the ACC.
But they are thought of mostly as a basketball school.
Right.
That's where most of their sports tradition is. No more, because Jim Grobe has done an outstanding job. This is the second program that he has built from scratch. Ohio University was nothing when he got there. He spent 6 years there. He put them on the college football map. And look, there are people interested in Jim Grobe, and rightfully so. My sense is that he will stay at Wake Forest. He's making about $1 million right now. That's not chump change, but comparing it to some of the other big names in college coaching,
like Urban Meyer, who we talked about before,
that number's going to go up.
Yeah.
If Wake Forest is smart, and I'm sure they're trying to figure out a way, because the job that he's done at Wake to put them in a position to be considered an ACC football power, they weren't in the conversation. They were picked last in the preseason polls for the ACC rankings.
Yeah, they were picked last, but the most impressive part here about Wake Forest, this is something that's really hard to do. They went 6-0 on the road this season. Most schools can't do that. Ohio State obviously did. Florida did not. Wake Forest was undefeated on the road.
Jason, I know that through your years, you haven't lived very long, but through your years, you have felt ostracized. You have felt left out of certain aspects of life.
You're picking on me now?
This is a safe haven, this show, for people like you and for kickers. There was a connection. There was a connection here.
I was not good at soccer.
Okay, NFL kickers.
You played tennis.
Trust me, look around the NFL. If you ever go to a practice, everybody is playing hard. They're gritty. They're going at it. And then there are two guys off to the side, a punter and a kicker, that are like passing the ball to one another and making small talk. The kickers are part of the team, and this week, yes, their impact was felt. Martin Gramatica, for anyone that watched that Dallas Giants game, he was praying more than a prostitute in church on a Sunday, if you know what I mean, leading up to that final kick.
This is a lunchtime show.
It's a lunchtime show, but people get the references. Gramatica hits the game winner for the Dallas Cowboys. Josh Brown for Seattle. Huge kick at the end for a game they desperately needed to have to stay one step ahead of the competition in the NFC. And Rob Baronis. Who? Rob Baronis, the kicker from the Tennessee Titans, a 60-yarder to pull off the upset of the week as they beat the Indianapolis Colts,
and
the Tennessee Titans.
That's back-to-back upsets on the foot of Baronis, too, because he had a 49-yarder to beat the Giants the week before. You know, you're looking at Neil Rackers type from last year. Of course, Rackers missing kicks this year. But how about Grammatica? The guy hadn't kicked in 2 years. He hadn't touched the football, hadn't stepped on the field. His brother Bill, a couple of years ago, broke his arm celebrating a field goal. Now, that has nothing to do with anything, but I just wanted to point that out there. But Josh Brown, he tied the record, NFL record, 4 game-winning kicks in the regular season inside of a minute. Seattle, without Matt Hasselbeck, without Sean Alexander, has itself in position to still get home field advantage, at least for a couple of games in the playoffs, and it's because of him. And
Hasselbeck and Alexander are now back, and their timing is pretty good because Seattle, although they are not humming along on offense, you can see that in the NFC, which is wide open, Bears clearly the best team, but beatable. Seattle has the kind of squad that might be able to go on a run.
Yeah, and a schedule down the stretch that is not that difficult for the Seahawks. All right, you're never going to see a kicker taken number 2 in the NFL draft.
No.
You're never going to see Uri taken number 1 or number 752 if it ever goes up that high. You will see this guy for many years to come. Reggie Bush, ladies and gentlemen, number 2 draft pick. And Sunday he showed what the Saints want out of him. 4 touchdowns, 3 on the ground, 1 through the air. He is close. Now, it's not a guarantee he'll get there, but 73 receptions through 12 games this season. He may get 100 catches, and you can't call him a running back because, just like Percy Harvin, what is he? Is he a running back? Is he a wide receiver? You're using him as everything, but whatever he is, Sean Payton has designed this offense so that Drew Brees can be successful, Reggie Bush can be successful, Deuce McAllister can be successful, and who would have thought it that the New Orleans Saints would have the best offense in the NFL? And even in a week when Drew Brees didn't have 300 yards, it was the first time in 6 weeks he didn't have it, they still won, and they whooped the 49ers.
Jason, NFL observers had been waiting for a breakout game like this from Reggie Bush. You hit on something, though, that, and I'm not going to cast a pall on his power performance this week. He deserves it.
It was the 49ers.
No. I'm not even going to say that. Down the road, if we're doing this show 4, 5, 6 years down the road, I don't know if Reggie Bush is ever going to be considered a complete running back. He is just a football player. I'm not convinced he can be a 20.
Is that a bad thing, though?
I don't know. Maybe now we have to just come to the understanding that roles are changing. That line is blurred in the NFL where you can just be a playmaker. Is he ever going to be a 20 to 25 carry guy? I can't say definitively yes.
But I don't think they need him to do that for
Maybe
them to
not this
win.
year.
I think that's the important part, though. For them to win, they don't necessarily need him to do that. And if they don't need him to do that, you've got Deuce, and Deuce is not that old. I guess by running back standards, he's been in the league, mid-range time. But if you don't need Reggie Bush to carry the ball 20 times, don't make him carry it 20 times. As long as he touches it 20 times and they gets the yards, gets in the end zone, and the Saints win, who cares?
You are taken as the number 1 pick.
2 pick.
Well, number 2 pick. Good point. I think I have to get
That's
over
why
that
he wasn't
mental.
number 2. Maybe that's why he wasn't number 1, because he can't be the number 1 running back.
I think Mario Williams, if he could do it all over again.
He could carry the ball 20 times a game.
No. He does have a huge cranium, though. I will say that about Mario. I had a Houston Texan game. He's got like an Arvydas Sabonis-sized head. It's very impressive. All right, let's stick with the NFL. And probably the unlikeliest of our power performers this week, Derek Anderson. No, not Derek Anderson from the NBA, member of the Charlotte Bobcats. Derek Anderson, the backup quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. Charlie Fry injures his wrist against Kansas City. Anderson steps in with no experience.
None.
0.
Nope.
He was drafted by the Baltimore Ravens. He was cut by the Ravens. He was signed by the Cleveland Browns. Derek Anderson stepped in with a 33-yard scramble, one of the great plays we've seen all season in the National Football League, and looked very comfortable, looked like he belonged. I'll give you one tidbit on him, and this one is amazing. Anyone out there watching right now, you're not going to believe this. Derek Anderson, who is 6'6", 239 pounds, that's big for a quarterback.
Very big.
Just before he hit his 10th birthday, his shoe size was 17. He had to order his shoes through the Portland Trailblazers. He grew up in the Oregon area, went to Oregon State. They pleaded with the Trailblazers to just give him a pair of shoes so that he could play with the other children. A 17 shoe.
Are you feeling bad for him that he didn't get to play with the? Are you reminiscing about your childhood? Did you not get to play with the kids? Did they leave you out?
Hard for me.
You were thrown out in stickball,
No. Are you kidding me? I was a star in stickball. We had issues and some other.
Maybe kickball, but wait a second here. 17 shoes, so he's probably, back when he was about 10, he was probably getting his shoes from Buck Williams.
Good.
Portland.
Very good.
I thought I'd throw some knowledge at you.
Very
You're
good.
playing with my age earlier.
Or Kevin Duckworth.
No, but Derek Anderson, okay, fine. The guy, NFL standards, hasn't had an experience, but he holds almost every passing record in Oregon State history. Here's the thing about Derek Anderson, and this is my favorite part of this power performance. At Oregon State, he had the Biletnikoff Award winner as the best wide receiver in Mike Hass, okay? In Cleveland, he has Braylon Edwards. He didn't use Braylon Edwards. His 2 touchdowns, Steve Hyden, 8-year tight end out of South Dakota State. He doesn't need a receiver. He doesn't need anything. Take it himself. Here's my question. Why are the Browns thinking about going back to Charlie Fry?
Well, because he's considered the future of the organization. Well, and they don't want to, after 1 week, snap their fingers and
like
make
guys
a
with
detour.
a size 17 shoe. They win football games.
They did last week.
All right, hey, speaking of guys with 17 shoe, I bet there's about 12 of them on one roster, and they're all on the Dallas Mavericks, folks. Now, the Dallas Mavericks lost on Monday night. So they had a 12-game winning streak. It was snapped by the Washington Wizards. That's okay. Go out the next night against the New Jersey Nets, your team. Beat them by 17. So you start a new winning streak. But how about this? Dallas Mavericks, they lost the first 4 games of the season, okay? If you regroup, Avery Johnson, they were in the finals last season, but Avery Johnson regroups the troops, win 12 in a row. But this is something you don't expect out of Dallas. They're doing it with defense, the 7th best defense in the NBA. They're only giving up 94 points a game on the season. This team doesn't play defense. This team scores points. Not this year. They're playing defense.
Last week I had a chance to talk to Jason Terry, guard from the Dallas Mavericks. Yeah, that's right, I'm name dropping. But Terry, the question was posed, was there a sense of panic in that locker room after losing in the NBA Finals in a series that they should have won?
Definitely.
To me, they were the better team than the
Definitely.
Miami Heat. They didn't get it done. Miami's got the championship trophy, and history was rewritten. After losing in the NBA Finals, being up 2-0, ready to wrap that series up, and now coming back, my thought was, maybe there would be a lag in this regular season. The idea that, hey, we just want to get back to the postseason and get back to business. Jason Terry said, no, quite the opposite. We are so motivated to show everyone that we are still an elite team. And despite that poor start, there was never panic in this locker room. Terry said that some of the leaders on this team, him included, Dirk Nowitzki included, stepped forward with the young guys and explained that this regular season, all eyes are on them. People want to see what kind of tone they set. To me, the Dallas Mavericks have to be considered a championship contender once again. I know a lot of people are jumping on the San Antonio bandwagon. I understand why. You've got Duncan, you've got Parker, you've got Ginobili. Guess
and they
what?
are in first place in the division.
They are. But Dallas got over an emotional hump last year by beating the San Antonio Spurs. That was a barrier that they could not deal with in prior years. They finally have. I think they believe that they belong on the same floor as anybody in the NBA. I think Dallas will have something to say about who the next champion is when this is all said and done.
The reason I like the Mavericks, they have Pops Mensah-Bonsu on the roster, the former George Washington star.
That's right.
All right, folks, there you have it. Our 7 power performances presented by Courtyard by Marriott. We want to hear what you have to say. 646-CBS 1000, 646-227-1000. And don't forget, first 2 callers, $50 gift certificate to CBSSportsStore.com. When we come back, Gary Danielson on the horn. We'll talk to him about Florida and Ohio State. Stay tuned.
Uncle Ian. I mean, that's just...
You want a hat?
That's